Hello, co-designers. Welcome and thank you for accepting our invitation. We are Living in the Ish, a nonprofit co-design research group. This video was made to bring you on board to our Imagining Student Housing project in collaboration with OCAD University. Today, we are grateful to live and work on the ancestral lands of the indigenous peoples. OCAD University acknowledges the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original owners and custodians of the land on which we stand and create. In the first part of this video, we'll go over who we are, what it is we are researching, and what our concept and values are behind the Ish. We'll then go over the macro context of the current housing crisis, why it matters, our objectives, and who are our stakeholders. In the final part of this video, you'll learn how we'll carry out this research together and what's next. This video will take about 25 minutes to watch, but feel free to pause to take breaks or rewind or rewatch.
But before we get into the fun stuff, get to know us a little bit. My name is Sabrina. I'm the former elected Executive Director of Graduate Studies at the OCAD SU. I'm also an international student, an interdisciplinary researcher, and a radically queer housing activist.
Hi, I'm Lucy Minesong, elected Board of Governors member, Graduate Studies representative at OCAD University. I'm a domestic student, second-generation immigrant, and an affordable housing advocate.
So, the Imagine Student Housing Project aims to create an inclusive housing ecosystem for OCAD University through co-designing with students, housing developers, and OCAD U administration.
So, what's this ISH we keep talking about? ISH began as an acronym for Imagining Student Housing, ISH. But the more we said it, the more we thought about it, the more it evolved into becoming a mindset. It became our philosophy and guiding principle. Let's take a step back. Ish is an adjective suffix that transforms a base word to convey a sense of vagueness, approximation, or resemblance of that original word. For example, the walls in my bedroom isn't exactly purple, but it's purple-ish. So when we use ish, we're saying something is kinda, sorta, not really, identifying that we don't always have the language or systems to describe what's being imagined.
But ISH is more than an acronym or a grammatical tool. It's an attitude, mindset, and ethos. ISH is fueled by radical imagination and our collective humanity. Living in the Ish means embracing ambiguity and existing in the in-between. Facing uncertainty with eagerness and curiosity. Allowing our minds to extend beyond the realm of what is deemed possible. Living in the Ish means dismantling the status quo and using our collective imagination to redefine what is possible, pressing the boundaries of housing into the realm of possibilities. The Ish is for everyone. You don't need to be an expert or hold any special titles to be a part of our project. Housing is a human right. Home is for everyone.
While we're calling this a project, because it's part of our required major research project, we're looking at it as more of an initiative. The problem with a project is that it has a beginning, middle, and an end. An initiative continues on, and we want to continue on to include student voices beyond this institution and beyond the project timeline. This is also research-ish. We aren't looking to study people, get feedback, and design for the users. This is an action to include student voices in the design process from beginning to end and giving you a seat at the table. And we'll be designing a house-ish. As students, you will be sharing your lived experiences and designing beyond the brick and mortar. You will be designing a home for your community.
Before we get into the why, we would invite you to pause and reflect. As we apply a decolonial lens to this project, we want you to continue to ask the question, what does developing housing mean on stolen indigenous land? So let's get into the why. We're experiencing a global housing crisis. A staggering 1.6 billion people around the world lack adequate housing and basic services, with projections that this could rise to 3 billion by the year 2030. So let's zoom in a little bit closer and look at the housing crisis here in Turtle Island, also known as North America. History on stolen land. Colonial practices prioritize individualism, ownership, and overconsumption of land and materials. This has led to land dispossession, unequal distribution of land, segregated zoning, resource exploitation, wealth inequality, and many other practices that contribute to the housing crisis. These colonial practices also inform systemic barriers such as stigmas, discriminations, and what is known as NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Affordable housing often carries a stigma, with residents encountering discrimination fueled by the belief that such housing attracts crime and devalues property. Communities may oppose affordable housing developments, citing worries about property values, aesthetics, and changes to the neighborhood's character. In certain areas, regulations restrict the location of student housing to maintain neighborhood homogeneity. And also, we can't talk about the housing crisis without mentioning COVID 19. Economic downturn during COVID 19 transformed the housing market. COVID 19 changed residential location decisions, caused a rise in housing prices and rent, and fiscal and monetary policy interventions during the pandemic have contributed to affordability declines reaching a 30-year low. Let's zoom in closer and look at Canada, also known as Canada. Whose responsibility is housing anyway? Neoliberalization and housing inequality. Before the 1990s, Canada actively built non-market, nonprofit co-ops in social housing. The deliberate shift of responsibility to the private sector elevated the priority of profitability and wealth creation over ensuring housing affordability. Also, we're suffering from what's known as the missing middle. The concept of the missing middle housing identifies the gap between traditional single family homes and high density apartment complexes. This lacks a variety of housing choices to accommodate different needs and lifestyles. Let's zoom in even closer to Canadario, also known as Ontario. The lack of student housing is said to be a primary driver of housing shortages. There's currently regulatory strategies to control student housing through zoning and other discriminatory municipal bylaws. Let's look even closer here in Takaranto, also known as Toronto. OCADU is in dire need of student housing in response to community and federal demands. International student visas will be prioritized to designated learning institutions. Designated learning institutions will be required to participate in a new reporting scheme, sharing data with the IRCC. This data will include a variety of metrics, one of which includes the availability of institution-managed housing. Why are we doing this project? The housing crisis in Takaranto is disproportionately impacting marginalized communities, especially post-secondary students, such as those at OCADU. OCADU, being a commuter campus without university-affiliating housing options, leaves its students at a further disadvantage during this crisis. And in response to community and federal pressures, OCADU is initiating collaboration with students to establish its inaugural student housing. This commitment is reflected in OCADU's academic and strategic plan and is reinforced by the housing partners' commitment to prioritize student input. Through formal agreements such as the Memorandum of Understanding, called an MOU, OCAD is dedicated to fostering student engagement in the development of housing partnerships.
So, what are our objectives? Mainly two goals: amplify student voices and ensure we take a bottom up inclusive approach, meaning valuing you, the people with lived experiences, to workshop and design student housing. To do this, we have 3 questions we hope to answer by the end of this. 1. How can the needs of students requiring housing at OCADU be better defined and enumerated? 2. What are the current barriers encountered by students regarding housing? And 3. What are the design considerations required for future development to remove barriers for OCADU students? To answer these questions, we need to consider who our stakeholders are. The stakeholders are who will participate in our project-ish. We have you, OCADU students, the faculty, staff, Senate, and Board of Governors members of OCADU, our housing partners, and the local community that make up the student experience. In our co-design workshop, we'll be working with these members at various stages of the design.
So, how do we accomplish this? Expanding upon a project initiated by the Affordability Task Force, which is a joint committee between OCADU and the OCAD Student Union, we are inviting students to share their housing experiences and co-design an inclusive housing model. In the co-design workshop, students will explore creative models, identify barriers, and ideate ways to improve housing design for OCADU's upcoming housing developments. Our outputs will inform student housing developers of an inclusive design reflective of OCADU's diverse and specialized student community. So here's a look at our process-ish. At the moment, we're currently in the process of reviewing applicants to our RFP. RFP is short for a request for proposals. After this applicant screening is done, we will hopefully enter an MOU with one or more housing developers. The next step for us is to start creating an online presence, such as our website and social media accounts. We'll also be engaging in student outreach, such as the student housing survey, which you might have found in your OCADU email inbox. The process data from that survey will also help inform our co-design process. After this, we'll enter into the co-design workshop. We'll evaluate our outputs, test our designs, synthesize outcomes, and publish these findings to our website and also disseminate them to our OCADU housing developers.
Going back to what we'll be doing is research-ish. Traditionally, research asks users to provide feedback as a focus group. What we'll be doing is co-designing student housing. Co-design is a process of designing with students rather than for students. You and your community will be the most impacted by the housing design, and so students like you are invited to participate in the process from its earliest stages. You'll directly contribute to the creation of housing designs that meets your community's unique needs. As co-design participants, you will not be involved as research subjects or consultants, rather as designers engaged in active and sustained collaboration. What this means is we're looking to work with the expert-ish. Typically, research and society see experts as people with professional titles like architect, interior designer, and the engineer. Those aren't the kind of experts we're looking for. We're seeking knowledge from people with lived experiences. Your story matters, your voice matters, and your experiences matter. We mean it when we say we're going to work together. You'll be invited to not only co-design with us, but to also co-facilitate with us. We're looking to build this together as equals. Why? Best said by K.A. McKercher, author of Beyond Sticky Notes, Co-Design for Real. Equity and justice-centered practices help us to recognize that racism, intergenerational disadvantage, and continued inequity are not accidental, but deliberately designed. And if they can be designed, then they can be redesigned.
So, what's next? The journey starts here with our induction video. Next, we will move into our co-design workshops, which we've broken down into 4 activities: power mapping and leveling the room, since we have a diverse community of students, housing developers, and administrators that will be joining us. Next, we will share, discover, and explore current barriers that students face regarding housing. Then we will begin to imagine, create, and develop design considerations that address these barriers. Our desired outcome of this project would be design considerations and prototypes for our upcoming housing development that are a result of our collective design process, that address the unique needs and challenges of our community and honor the land upon which we live, learn, and create. Thank you for watching our induction video. Please keep a lookout for your OCADU email inbox, where we'll be sending you some further information such as consent forms, media release forms, and other pieces of information that will prepare us for our co-design workshop. We've also included some links and resources if you'd like to learn more about the housing crisis here in Toronto and around the world. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you at our co-design workshop.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye!